Heartbeat. The Pulse of Care podcast is all about caring. How do we care for the vulnerable with dignity, respect, and compassion? How do we care for our bodies and our planet? And how do we care for each other without sacrificing our own health and well-being? Heartbeat, the Pulse of Care podcast creates space for courageous conversations for healthcare professionals about self-care, patient care, and what it means to weave our hearts into the sacred work of caring for others, caring for ourselves, each other, and the planet. Produced on the ancestral and unceded lands of the Snuneymuxw Nation, Heartbeat Podcast is a production of Foreign Israeli Yoga and Meditation.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Corinne McKell, and I am your host of Heartbeat, the Pulse of Care podcast. I am honored and acknowledged that I am joining you from Treaty 6 territory here in Beaver Hills House, commonly referred to as Edmonton, Alberta, the traditional lands of numerous Indigenous communities since time immemorial, Inuit peoples and Métis people. And I am who are stewards of this land, past and present. And I am privileged to call these lands my home, where I work, play, live in community, and raise family. And I am thrilled to introduce my guest today, Sarah Findlay.
Hello.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello, Corinne. Thank you for having me on today.
Professionally, Sarah is trained as an RN, yoga therapist, and mastered in counseling psychology. Amazing. And the term holistic, we hear a lot. And when I think of you and your experiences and what you offer as therapy, to me is the epitome of holistic. Integrating ancient wisdom, Ayurveda, with 20 years of nursing here in the West. I can imagine that your therapy approach, integrating all of that alongside and intertwined with the philosophical tenets of yoga, really using the somatic practices with talk therapy, and guiding people to use their breath through breath work and movement and meditation to unite the mind, body, and spirit. So yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm really curious about vicarious and secondary trauma, which differ by definition. What I'm referring to, generally speaking, is that impact and effect on an individual who is supporting or caring for others who have experienced trauma, whether that's processing through counseling or difficult emotions to direct patient care. Really, like so many disciplines do that. And the terms to me are, to be honest, like quite new. Only when I started, as a nurse educator and my reflection on nursing shifted, that I even became aware of them. And, Sarah, given that you've trained both as a nurse and a counseling therapist, I'm curious as to, is there a significant difference in the training or awareness on these topics?
Yeah, I think that From my own personal experience, and for many healthcare providers, people who are helpers and humanitarians, our jam is to help, to be in service, to, that's our gift. So when we're in these situations, when we are exposed to a trauma, an abnormal event, I think that it can happen, like you say, in nursing and counselling therapy. It can happen to psychologists. It can happen to many people who are working in mental health, physical health, all the different disciplines, because it is that abnormality occurring within a normal situation, or through a patient's story or client's story, we start to feel the impacts of those occurrences. So yeah, for training, like I say, recently I finished my master's in counselling therapy and counselling psychology, and there really is a lot of evidence now, a lot of research on how this can impact us, and also how we can look after ourselves. But in nursing, I trained in 1997, finished in 2000. So at that time, there wasn't really much. I think really the terminology started coming in for me in the late 2000s, when we started getting a little bit more trauma informed with our language. And then meme psychology came up, and with a million memes that we can read now to give ourselves understanding of, again, what's happened, what is happening, because when we are exposed to these abnormal stories and they do impact us in that way, vicariously, then it's about that recognition. Oh, this is what's happened, and validation. I'm not alone here, and this can happen to many people. So yeah, I think it's now awareness has grown. I'm sure you, as a nurse educator, you have more experience in giving that wisdom away to newer nurses.
Mm.
Is that right?
Yeah, well, thanks. Like I said, it was such a huge moment for me when I was like, how do you teach compassion? How do you teach empathy? And it really made me look at yeah, what we do and what I'm asking of my staff to bear witness to all the time. And that's when I was like, wow, what am I asking? And it had really snowballed into a lot of reflection, and me then diving into kind of understanding this, the impact and experiences, and then what can I offer? What ways, not that me personally can offer, but maybe even us as a culture, as professions, what can we do to help mitigate that vicarious trauma and secondary trauma. And Sarah, a lot of folks in our current system are experiencing moral distress. So moral distress occurs when our personal values don't match the values of the institution or that we're working in. So an example of not being able to give the quality care that you want to give somebody because of the restraints, the busyness, the pressures of the system. And I was wondering, Sarah, if you can share with us some ideas about how to decrease somebody's feelings of moral distress.
Yeah, I mean, we're really going into our beliefs and values when we come at it from more psychology of how can we cope when things don't feel right, when we come up against something and we wish something to happen and it doesn't feel right. Then we're going into our beliefs and values of what, as that person in service, that person who's showing up to be that humanitarian and then can't quite get there. It feels stuck, right? It's almost like a little bit of stuck energy, or that's incomplete. So understanding our limitations of sometimes the environments that we work in. And I like the terminology empathic distress, because it does show that it's, as us, we're distressed, we're not feeling it. But it's not necessarily this idea of like compassionate fatigue, where your energy it's so depleted, it's so gone that there's nothing left. It's more this idea, because I believe compassion is an unlimited well. It's within us, kind of, you know, similar to love, in that way that we can continually find a way to draw it up and pull it and find that within us. But empathy, when we're like giving it out and we're wanting to, you know, make sure we're giving to our service, and it's unable to be given, then it is that kind of uneasy feeling. So to ease our feelings, it is sometimes nice to look at our values and beliefs and just go, you know what, this is hard because this is not meeting up where I belong. Then sometimes looking at the organization you work for and what are their principles, or what are their codes of conduct, professional standards, professional practice, and are we actually reaching that? Are we able to do that? That's sometimes where we can maybe find a little bit of power, not so much just in self-care and how we look after ourselves, but in this external idea of using our voice to advocate for better service for our clients, so that when we have understanding, well, I believe that the patient care should be of the standard because of this, and then able to look at the protocols and practices and saying we're not quite reaching there, then sometimes a bit of like social justice, advocacy, being part of a union, planning committees, these things can help us as well find our voice and the way that we can still reach that point of satisfaction in a way, and not in distress. So our empathy can reach that place.
Oh, awesome. And Sarah, you mentioned too the part about self-care, because there's two pieces, right? It is the looking at our values and our workplace and what we can do to make that a safer and more, I guess, healthier work environment. And feel better about ourselves, and the care we're providing improves, and it's just that positive feedback loop. And you touched a little bit on like the importance also of self-care. And I was wondering if you could share with us what are some of your tools or ways that you find helpful for people who are in this line of work, and ways to take care of themselves, and also why you're so passionate about it.
Well, yeah, Karina and I worked alongside each other in an emergency department, and inner city emergency department, one of the busiest in Canada. And so, yeah, we saw a lot of stuff, and the ways of coping, we've gone and experimented all the different things, how to still show up and be the best nurse, and still show up at home and be the best, you know, mother, wife, family member, friend, you know, is finding these balances. So I think a huge part of it is that transition home. That's the part, recognizing what happened that day. That's a moments of reflection, I would say. And in those moments of reflection, feeling like knowing our own emotional regulations, but knowing how we are in an emergency department, just for instance, just for us, because it's so chaotic and we're on all day. So how does our body look when we're working as well, right? Are we holding this like this? Or is our jaw like this? Or like one of our colleagues, she did not pee for 12 hours, I'm telling you. So like...
Sarah, I remember, sorry to interrupt, I remember you telling me once, you said like, oh, that was like pretty, that person was really sick and that was a lot, hey? And I was like, oh yeah, I was like, good, you know, and you're like, and then you told me that you can tell when I'm like really concentrating, you could see my jaw. And honestly, I had no idea. Right. And then you telling me that now, like it was an awareness for me, and like, okay, and then relax.
Yeah, and relax. Yeah. So, you know, during the day, these little micro, you know, relaxations, moments of body scans, moments of deep exhalations, softening the jaw, softening the face. And then, yes, at the end of the shift, moments of reflection on where our body is, what's going on with it. And then if there are stories that are coming up, like there's too much going on, I always suggest before bed doing a little journaling. So whether that's writing something down or doing a video diary and getting the story out. So I would say that would be a little tip and trick from psychology, is to verbalize the story, say what happened, say what you saw. And because we document so well on our patients and our clients when we're in the environment, and we do such a good job of keeping that standards of practice for our clients, but for ourselves, we don't always do that reflection.
Yeah. Yeah. And I found too, when doing that, both with the reflection, I feel like whether it's like writing or scanning the day, and it feels like a release, an actual release, and the day is over. So I can transition to the evening. And of course, there are some times when you practicing it regularly, I've noticed like, okay, I need more support, that things are kind of this reoccurring. And then what else can I do? Right? Like
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like you said, that somatic release, you said about releasing, I think that's where the idea of somatics, and that's another passion of mine, is these movements of like shaking and dancing and singing. And that's what Crean and I would do. We'd get together after work and we'd get our guitars out and we would sing songs, and that was how we would help release our experiences. So yeah, there's different ways to do it. It doesn't necessarily have to look like yoga, meditation, and long walks on the beach. These are moments of privilege if you can do that, carve that out. But for sure, you can turn up the music in the kitchen while you're making supper and shake it out and bless your food and move on to your day in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so important to like also to talk with colleagues, right? About, and I think what that's changed with the culture too is that we're being more open to talk about, some of the hard times, right? And how we're feeling. And what it's so profound doing it with colleagues is because it's such a unique experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
We tried to talk to our friends who are not in this line of work or partners. It's just, I guess, not as understood, I guess, right? Or validated. And it's so important
Mm-hmm.
that we're talking about our mental health so openly. So thank you for your courage, because you've
Yeah.
been an absolute like trailblazer with this topic, right?
Oh, I've been all around the houses when it comes to debriefing, because debriefing was a thing that we never did, right? And then it was
No.
something that was kind of brought in. And then now the research on it's saying it might not be that great. So we really need to know as well when we're debriefing who we're debriefing with. Is that person a safe person? Is that person ready to hear this story right now? Can I ask permission to tell your story right now? It's really affecting me. It was from working last Wednesday, and then the person's like has a moment to be ready. I think we understand in debriefing as well that there could be 4 people in a room and everyone's going to feel differently when things occur. So one story might impact someone much differently than another. And so we don't want to devalue anyone's emotions. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, all around the house sees that story. I'm like, yeah, debriefing. And then we're like, well, maybe not debriefing. So we're just trying to find that balance there. But personal reflection and self-reflection, I think you mentioned that back in the day in your nursing school, that
Yeah.
was something that was part of nursing school, right?
It was, yeah, huge. Journaling, right? Every day you had to, as a requirement, right? As part of your courses. And, I don't think I really valued it at the time. And then just recently found these old journals and I was kind of reading them, and it was really inspiring. Firstly, like that passion.
Oh,
And I could see how it was really helpful, really helpful.
yes.
And it's something that, I'm practicing again. So that was interesting. Like you said, things go right around circle, right? Sometimes.
Yeah. And that's it with any of these little hints and tips and tricks. There's certain points in your life where they fit in and it works for you, and it's just whatever works for you at that time, right? There's no hard and fast rules of how you avoid vicarious or secondary trauma. How do you not get exposed to empathic distress? Like we are working in these environments. Isn't a chance that these things are going to happen. We can do our best to protect ourselves, and we can do our best when it happens as well. But just trying to return our nervous system to a place of calm, a place of safety. That's really, for me, that's the main kind of message, is returning to a place of calmness and safety within ourselves.
Right. And on that topic, we've talked about it a little bit, but would you say like that's about your specialty and interest in specifically somatic practices? And do you think in particular that's helpful for this fast-paced or caregiver helper disciplines?
Yeah, I think it's this idea of just consistently cultivating a sense of safety in the body, whether it's a safe mobilization or a safe immobilization. So just chilling out, or, you know, interacting with people or being at work, that we're still in a place in our nervous system where we can have clear thought and be able to breathe fully and relax our jaw, and be living within our body, and then not realize, you know, 4 hours later, oh, I haven't eaten or drank, or, you know, so still being in tune with ourselves. And then being really curious. Okay, well, I never ate for 4 hours. Not saying, oh, I know how bad me. More say, well, what happened there? Why did I not realize? You know, what did I prioritize over my own health at this moment, my own hydration? So curiosity within your nervous system, and safety. That's my jam.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much, Sarah. And I like what you just said about not like, oh, why didn't I? Right? But like you said, like being curious and what's going on there and trying to get underneath the layers is yeah, really, really impactful.
Yeah, because as humanitarians and people who are working in the service, then it was very easy for us to always prioritize other people's needs, and that's maybe part of our own ways of being, and many of us are very like that. So
Yeah,
it
the
is
podcast.
so, so it is good to, you know, stop and hydrate and just take a moment for ourselves. Not when it's like, okay, it's been 4 hours, let's take 15 minutes, or you got 30 minutes, but just these little micro moments for yourself.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Sarah, so much for taking the time to share your incredible insights and your experiences, trying to summarize it in this short time frame. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for this opportunity to speak to an audience of people who are open and interested in how we can all flourish and thrive in this healthcare, as a healthcare providers, and just build each other up so everyone is healthy, patients, clients, and the providers. It's yeah, it's a beautiful thing you guys are doing. So thank you so much, Kareen and Farah.